Hi there, and welcome to today's episode of How the Game Was Won. We are in round 6 of the FIDE Grand Prix in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and we are looking at the game played between Mamedyarov with the white pieces and Kasimdzhanov with the black pieces. This game was played on the 27th of October 2014. And we're going to be looking at opening wise the Vienna game. And as you all know, with the Vienna game, it's a case of white rushes to get himself fully developed before black and crack open the center for a brutal central attack before black has had a chance to finish his development. That's the general strategy. Let's have a look-see at how things went. I'll fly through the opening 9 moves before we get to the first interesting position to look at. We've got e4, e5, knight c3, knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, d3, d6, all nice and symmetrical so far. Bishop e3, knight ge7, h4, h5, queen d2, castles, and bishop h6. Already the position is developing in a very strange format, and we'll just have a look at how strange things continue to get from here on in. Black continued with knight d4, neglecting the development of the bishop on c8. And on white side, there's just the knight sitting on g1 to be developed before castling and centralizing rooks. But we continued with bishop takes, king takes, knight d1, d5. Now here, because white has been slow in his development and black has been able to get himself developed more quickly than white, it follows logically that Kasimdzhanov will be the one to try and break open the center because his development is far superior to white. And we continue with knight e3, bishop e6, f4, d takes, and again in the attempt to crack everything open, black played f5 in this position. But before we get to look at f5, which is a fairly risky move but not all that necessary, there were 2 other options at black's disposal. The first is the possibility of doing e takes, g takes and play c5, or doubling back, or playing knight b6, queen f2, f6, which gives black a good position. And if you notice here, in this position with the d file opened up as it is, black is hitting the d1 square, which means that the option to castle queenside is no longer available to white. And with the black's king that's lifted to g7 at the moment, it will be ideal for white to be able to use the pawn march to crack open the king side, and for that reason having the king's called away to a safe castling square on the queen's side would be his logical preferred route for king safety. So doubling back to where we were, so Black played the risky f5. Now white develops his last minor piece with knight h3, and black grabs the pawn with f takes e4. Although it's not really, can't really call it a permanent grab because of the possibility of recapturing the pawn with the bishop, and because black has got the permanent weakness of the double pawn formation, it's just going to be a matter of time before white's able to recapture the pawn. So it's not necessary to capture straight away, but rather look at ways of strengthening up the position, especially looking at the beautiful weak square in black's camp over there, which is an ideal outpost for a knight. And indeed, that's where the knight goes to right now, which black replies with the knight on e to f5. And now, because of the fact that the d file is now blocked with pieces, white is now able to castle queenside, get both his rooks into the kingside attack. Black plays bishop a2, grabbing another pawn, but really it doesn't make that much of a difference, because all white now starts doing is returning the favor and mops up the e5 pawn to start off with. Black grabs in g3, and all these moves are doing is effectively opening up lines that white will be able to use to attack the black king. So white goes rook h to e1, centralizing the rooks for a strong thrust through the center, while having his minor pieces in a position to be able to attack down the kingside, because white has got, for instance, the strong knight sitting on g5, and once the bishop is taken on e4, that in turn will be able to apply pressure down onto the g6 square, which is yet another weakness in the black position. So here black continued with c5, trying to strengthen up, support the d4 square, which is his knight outpost. And as you mentioned earlier, now white wraps up the e4 pawn. Black takes the bishop, white takes with the knight, and black comes in with the queen down to h4. And in this position, that Kasimdzhanov has now finally captured all of the pawns that Mamedyarov has left for him available to be taking, and in spite of that, white has still got the superior position. And the interesting part here is that the computer is indicating that black's in the stronger position, but in actual fact it's white that's in the stronger position here. And because there's not the obvious realization of exactly how strong the potential threats are behind white's position, and after wrapping up the pawns there's no real clear plan of attack for black, he loses the thread of the game slightly and allows white to unleash the full force of his kingside attack. We've got queen g2, applying pressure down towards the the black king, and all what we need to do is, for instance, strengthen that with a rook eg1, and that will give black an immensely strong position going forward. And here is the point where black loses the plot slightly and plays rook ad8, which looks like a reasonable centralizing move, but all it does is unleash the option for the white attack. And what I think it was is this was just a pure miscalculation, because he completely probably overlooked the potential strength behind white dropping a pawn onto a new super strong outpost of f6, because right now the white has got a number of threats going on, with, for instance, rook d4, and the other serious threat that's going on at the moment will be, for instance, the other threat, really serious threat, is knight f5, which is forking the queen, while the pawn can't capture because it's being pinned by the queen. So these are really serious threats that black needs to deal with, which is why that knight f6, I believe, was an oversight and wasn't properly calculated by Kasimdzhanov in this situation. But in order to be able to try and compensate for this, black plays rook f6, which allows e takes f6, queen takes f6, queen d7, and now basically we've got white that's up the exchange here, and the rooks are on two open files, and the black king is looking way exposed and vulnerable on its g7 square. Black played queen f7, hoping to exchange queens. White dropped back to f4, queen f6, queen d7 check, queen f7. These type of backwards and forwards moves played by grandmasters is often a way of being able to build up time on the incremental clock before needing to settle down and focus and think of some tactical maneuvers. So you play let me just double that back quickly. So you play the queen b7 check, queen f7, queen e4, queen f6, bishop e7, queen f7. Obviously, if you had to run through the same sequence again, it would be a draw by threefold repetition, but just to run through that sequence twice gains you a good couple of minutes on the clock that you can use to think over your next serious tactical combination. Here white deviates and goes to a6, bishop e6, trying to get back and do some sort of defending. But the big problem that black faces at the moment is that he's got his kingside defensive pawns in the same color as the bishop, which leaves gaping holes on the dark squares. White continues king b1, rook b8, queen d6. Obviously the c-pawn is a logical target, because once the c-pawn drops, the the knight needs to go somewhere else as well, because it's effectively the c-pawn that's maintaining the knight being able to stay on its outpost at d4. So once you've managed to displace the c5 pawn, the knight will need to vacate its strong outpost. And here, instead of trying to do something to strengthen or defend that c5 pawn, black in turn plays rook b6, and there's no logical reason to do that, but all he does this is that he allows the c5 pawn to go, and with the c5 pawn gone, black has to relinquish his strong knight outpost by playing knight f3, and from here on in the black position just crumbles with queen c3 check. As I mentioned, the black's major problem along the dark squares. King h7, rook f1, pinning the knight up against the queen. Rook b8, knight g2, and in this position, for instance, black could have played something like rook f8, where white would have the option of playing rook f2 and then double the other rook in behind, which would still be a strong position, or for that matter, there's knight h4, knight d2, which is, again, it's a bit wishy-washy, but instead black plays bishop g4, and after knight h4, the pressure of the black's attack, or sorry, white's attack against the black king position is just simply too strong, and Kasimdzhanov actually resigned in this position. But for the sake of all of you out there, instead of just quitting the game at the resigned position, let's play through the types of obvious moves that black may have at his disposal. He could have played, say for instance, knight d2 check, which drops the knight. Queen g7, trying to shore up some sort of a defense. Play b3 just to relieve the rook pressure down the b file, so that black can't come up with some sort of swindle down the line. Here black can play bishop d1, rook d1, and at the moment white is the knight for the pawn up, but with the rook and queen working together as a cohesive unit, and certainly everything is way in white's favor at the moment. For instance, rook f8, queen e3, putting pressure on the a pawn, queen f6, Obviously white needs to do something with the knight, so we can bring that back to f3, king g7, rook d7 check, king g8, we come up with knight e5, rook e8, queen e4, queen f5, we can drop into c6, queen e6, queen g2, h4, queen g5, and come across with it, for argument's sake, rook b8. Not that it makes much of a difference, because the queen drops into h6, and really it's now all over by the shouting. The best that black could possibly do to prevent a simple mating 4, mating 5 combination would be, for instance, to play rook takes, and obviously you're not going to take with the pawn, because then the queen comes in and checks with a chance of maybe getting something towards a perpetual, so you bring the king into c1, queen takes in d7, knight takes in d7, rook back to b6, knight takes, a takes, queen takes in g6 check, say king h8, no sorry, king f8 is slightly stronger, but either which way the b pawn drops, and it's just a matter of time before the king mops up the other pawn. For instance, b7, queen b4, king f6, mop up the pawn, and really you can either do a mating combination with the king and queen, or you just isolate the king onto the e to h side of the board, march the other pawn through, queen that, and it's all over. So that's how the game was won. Please post your comments and questions down below. Remember to click the thumbs up, like button down below the video as well, and share this out amongst your chess friends. And also just down below the video you'll see a huge big red subscribe button. Click that, subscribe to my channel, that way you'll be able to stay up to date with new games as I post them on a week-to-week basis. Stay carved up for the win, stay safe out there, see you next time, cheers.